I would kneel by the side of my bed and pray that tomorrow I'd get money so that I could eat. That's the level that it got to. It felt like I was in a living hell.
Getting to the checkout, find some food for the day and not knowing if your card's going to work, it's awful.
I was completely broken from not having any money ever. This is kind of a bit of a wild thing to say, but I've made more money in the past 4 months than I have in the past 4 years combined.
How much?
$321,000. This is pretty new to me, to be honest, man. Got a message today from one of my clients, Hugo. He just pulled in 9,000 in the last 2 days. There are 3 books that I recommend to all of my clients.
Habits.
I'll give you my 6 non-negotiables that I live by and I teach my clients.
Hey everyone, just a quickie before we get into the conversation. The podcast is always going to be free, so I'm never going to ask you to pay for anything. But if you could do me the kindness of subscribing and maybe leaving a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and enjoy the episode. So Tom, would you tell me the story on how you went from 0 to 70,000 a month in recurring revenue in 18 months, was it?
Yeah, let's just, I'll put a disclaimer, not recurring revenue, just revenue. It's not like that's just coming in every single month. So in December of last year, collected $70,000 in cash. Like actual round number, it was literally bang on 70,000. But yeah, I'll be honest, like the story, it wasn't just 18 months. It was like 10 years, man. Like it's, that's probably the thing that most people don't want to hear, in the path to make that kind of money. It isn't like overnight success. It's 10 years of taking risks, putting in reps, trying stuff out, failing at a lot of things, learning a load of things, taking bets on yourself by investing in yourself. 10 years ago, I was a dentist. I was a new dentist. I studied 7 years at university, got into dentistry because that is what I decided at the age of 15 that I was going to do for the rest of my life. I'll cut the story short, but after 2 years of practice, I was stood in a surgery looking around, and the room was painted white walls, and it felt like a jail cell. It felt like a mental asylum cell, to be honest, like a padded room cell, but with no padding. And for the first time in my life, I was like, shit, if this is it for 40 years, this sucks. Like this is going to suck. And so I was kind of I was 24, 25 at the time. And I realized that if I was going to try something out, it was better sooner rather than later. And that's when I actually started working with my first ever not business coach, but a life coach. I worked with a life coach to help me kind of plot my next steps. Because I recognized that was quite a spicy decision to make. And I wanted to get someone who objectively help me navigate through that decision. So I invested in my first coach back in 2015 or 2014, 2015, when I made that decision. And I remember that being quite like that felt like, okay, I'm giving this guy a few grand, which at the time, I didn't have much money. And I was like, but I know I need to speak to someone. I need to take this decision with some seriousness. He helped me then plot my path. He was like, we kind of decided together through a process that he took me through that the technology industry was where I had some interest in. And so I kind of went down that path. I managed to get a couple of unpaid internships whilst I was working as a dentist on a few days a week, and eventually got a job in a small tech startup. Over the next kind of 6-7 years, I worked in a bunch of different tech startups, from small ones all the way to kind of like large ones. And the last job I had, I was a consultant. I was an analytics consultant to enterprise brands. So retail brands, all types of brands. I was like the biggest names in the world. I could reel some off: Pizza Hut, NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Sweaty Betty, Superdry, Harrods, Chanel. My job was to help their digital teams improve their customer journeys, reduce friction in their funnels, and make more money from understanding how their traffic goes through their funnels. So I did that for a couple of years, and that was around COVID. And at that time, I was like, okay, I'm 30 years old now, 31, and I really want to do my own thing. And at the time, I was working alongside a colleague who had a couple of we were all working in the same business. We're both consultants, and we had e-commerce clients. And so we thought, screw it, let's make an e-com brand. Very naively, fast forward 3 years and £30,000 worth of debt, and realizing that e-com is no joke, and that was my first failure in business. At that point, I needed to figure something out, and I tapped into just resourcefulness at the time. I was like, I'm not going back to a 9-to-5. I had some interests in communities. I launched my first community, paid community, and just spent the next 2-3 years flailing around, trying stuff out. I started an agency with a couple of other guys. We had built that to around $50,000 a month, where we were helping emerging businesses launch communities, grow on social media. And that was at that time, that was about 2 years ago now. I was so miserable because I was broke. I was dead broke all the time. So I was working in an agency where we were making a load of money, but we weren't seeing any of it because there were 3 founders, we had staff to pay, and we weren't making enough for me to feel comfortable. And that was the toughest time of my life. I wasn't able to pay rent most months. I'd go to the shops every day, not knowing if my card would get declined when I would go to buy food. And a lot of the time it did, because I just didn't have any money. So I had to live off, as little as I could. Typically it was like $10 a day that I could kind of just manage. And I did that for about 6 months in 2023. I finally left my agency in summer 2023, and I started the business that I have now, which is Creator Launch, where I help creators through all of the skills that I've built up over the years: funnel design, analytics, community building, personal branding. I would help other creators grow their business and make money. And so I started that in July 2023. And I heard, for the first time, I kind of started to see some momentum, started to really get clients results. And I was on my own. I could make the decisions for myself. I felt finally aligned to what I was doing. And so I spent the whole of, the first 9 months of last year, 2024, really just focusing on my clients and focusing on getting them the best results that I possibly could, helping them grow their businesses. And then by the time when it got to October, that was when I was like, okay, I've kind of got a really good foundation. Now I can put some fuel into the engine. And that's where I dropped a mini series on YouTube at the end of the year, which got a lot of traction. And that helped me get a load of eyeballs onto my stuff. At the same time, my Instagram was growing very fast. And so I think the perfect storm of everything happening really just kind of concluded in me having a really crescendo to the year. And that's the kind of story. And I don't even know if that's even a compelling story, but that's my story.
What was the breaking point? You were doing the agency, and I heard on one of the videos you said, if you don't mind me saying, you said you would literally be begging your other founders to pay you some money.
Yeah.
And I was like, that really hit hard. Can we tap into that time period and a bit more about what was going on and how you sort of jumped ship?
I mean, the breaking point was me crying on Zoom calls with them multiple times. That was the breaking point. it's like I can quite literally say it was me crying on Zoom calls with my business partners because I was broken. Yeah, I was stressed to the absolute tits. And yeah, I was completely broken from just not having any money ever. And yeah, the truth is my business partners, they both had money. Like they both had savings. They both had, they weren't in the same situation I was in. And so this is where it's kind of like, it was really tough because for them, it was like they could soak up they could soak it up. I couldn't, I just didn't, I had no wiggle room. And so it just ground me down every month. Like I would be like, it felt like begging. That's why I say begging, because I would have to go to them and I have to be like, guys, like I really need some money so I can like live. And I think, and it was a load of friction because it was, for them, it was like, they were thinking, well, we would rather keep the money in the business so that we can invest it in employees or whatever.
So that was your rock bottom moment. Like what happened next? And, because obviously if you were struggling financially, like how did you like break out of that to actually start earning some money to be able to invest in yourself and whatnot?
Sure. So first of all, like on one day I remember, I remember very vividly when I made the decision. I remember exactly where I was. Just I can actually see it outside of my window. It's really funny. When I made the decision I said, guys, I'm done. I'm going to leave you guys to it. I'm going to go do my own thing. So at that time, I was working in that agency with one main client who I'd been managing that relationship, and so I said, "Hey, I want to take this client with me," and I proposed that to them. I proposed that to the client, and then kind of like ended up being a bit of like a pitch. Like we both had to pitch to the client on why they should stay with either me or go with them. Fortunately, I'd done most of the work, so the client, it felt logical to stick with me. So that was the good news, is that I had a tiny bit of cash with that client. Like we're talking maybe a couple of grand a month coming from that client. And then I very quickly was like, that's not enough. And I remember thinking, okay, I've got to get busy here. So I remember within the space of like a couple of days, I'd launched the business. I remember building out a business model. And then the next thing was, okay, how do I make some money here? So what I did was, first up, I was like, okay, I need to get some authority here. So at the time I was posting on Twitter, on X, and I probably had about 9,000 followers on X, which meant I had a little bit of leverage. So I reached out to a bunch of some of the biggest creators on X who I was kind of aware of. So some names, if some of your audience might be familiar, guys like Dakota Robertson, Kieran Drew, Taylor Simmons, Logan Stortai, can't remember who else, but like Justin Scott. Yeah, a bunch of people. There was 12. And I was like, I'm going to do this thing called the Solopreneur Summit over the next, in a 2-week period, where I'm going to interview a key opinion leader every day. Would you be interested? And most people said yes, which was awesome. And I was like, okay. So I promoted the hell out of that. I got 12 of these guys, interviewed them every single day. That got enough, like, that gave me a little bit of like eyeballs on my stuff. So what I did is I captured that momentum, and over the next 3 weeks, I got on networking calls with probably about 60 or so people from Twitter, people who were posting content, active, and I just reached out and I was like, hey, like, kind of connected, and was like, would you just fancy jumping on a call sometime? And so over the space of like 3 weeks, and I've still got to go back to my calendar, and it was just stacked with calls. Like, and I just got on as many calls as I could with as many people as possible. And that was with absolutely nothing to sell, just literally just to meet people. And I was following honestly, I was following my intuition. You know, I was like, I just followed my intuition. My gut was saying, just get on calls with people and meet, as you never know what's going to happen. So I just got on as many calls as I could. And at the same time, kept on continuing to kind of crush it with my one client. So what ended up happening was I was on a profit share. So I was ramping up the amount of money that I was getting each month, like a smallish amount. So it would go from $2,500 to like $3,000. Then that was really, that was good. So got on all these calls, and then a week or so after the calls had ended, this 3-week batch of calls, I messaged everyone and who I'd been on calls with, and I said, hey, by the way, I'm going to be launching this thing in 4 months. I'm going to be launching a coaching program or an accelerator program. It's going to cost $4,000 to do. But I'm launching a beta cohort over the next 4 months for that. And instead of it being $4,000, it's only going to be like $395, to the classic thing of getting it just underneath, you know. So $395. And so if you want, you guys, you know, I'm looking for like a handful of people who would be interested in being part of that. And I'm going to help them with this, and this. We're going to meet every week and have kind of like a, like a masterclass type of call once a week. We'll have a private community on Discord. We'll have a couple of guest speakers. And I pitched this thing as like a 16-week cohort. And I think I sold about 15 units, 15 creators joined. And yeah, did that. And the super cool thing is like, I think like 3 or 4 of those people who were in that cohort are still clients of mine now, like full-time clients. They ended up upgrading when I launched my main thing at January, just as I said I was going to do, which is super cool. So I did that. Now at that same time, during that cohort, I was like, I needed some more cash. And I saw a job spec open up as a growth consultant for, so it was called ConvertKit at the time, but Kit, the email newsletter company, they had a sister agency they still have called Paperboy Studios, and they were just kicking off. And it was kind of co-run by the founder of Kit, Sahil Bloom, and super nice guy called Shane Martin, who is the guy who is essentially the operator owner. And I was like, I can do this. This is well within my wheelhouse of being kind of like an account manager. And so I put together like a pitch deck and I sent it to Shane and was like, dude, I didn't know him. I just was like, I'd followed him and I'd always found his stuff really, I was like, this guy's a legit operator. If I can learn from him, that would be amazing. Mm-hmm. So I sent him like this just pitch and he was like, dude, you are like way overqualified for this. I was like, I don't care. Let me do it. And so it was a part-time job for 10 hours a week. And that got me that paid my rent. So it's $2,000 per month and that paid my rent. And I saw behind, underneath the hood of all of the biggest creators in the world, their email newsletters. I helped them grow their email newsletters. I worked there for 4 months. And then that was perfect timing for me in January when I was like, okay, I'm going to launch my main thing now. And then I started working one-on-one with people on a one-on-one basis to help them grow their businesses. And that was the beginning of last year, 2023, which is kind of crazy to think because it feels like so much has happened since then. And then, I spent the whole of last year really being patient and focusing on trying to figure out how to get results for my client base. But that's the kind of explanation of how I made it happen.
Yeah, that's cool. So you were talking about when you were DMing people on Twitter, doing your networking calls. Just to confirm, these weren't recorded like podcasts. They would literally just call.
Just a 20-minute, half an hour Zoom call. Yeah.
Yeah. And what did you learn from those calls? Because the idea of like networking, I bet like lots of people go, do you know what I mean? Like I think people think of networking of like people who have like a bit of an agenda and they're following like a process.
Yeah.
But like, how were you able to get through all of them? And yeah, just say a little bit more on that.
Part of it was I was following my intuition, to be honest. Like I kind of alluded to that. Was I don't know what was no one told me to do that. No one recommended. I was just like I'm just following my instinct here. And the cliche of, you know, it's not about what you know, but who you know. Mm-hmm. I have always considered myself a pretty poor networker, to be honest. Like I always hated when I had a job. I hated going to networking events. I hated doing that. I always found them fake and forced. So when I did those networking calls, you know, that was just the intention was just to meet as many people as possible that I had been communicating with, engaging with on Twitter at the time. So people, you know, engaging with other people on comments, and I just be like, okay, I'm just going to get on a call with these people.
Did they happen to be like? Did you just follow a lot of coaches at the time, or? I'm just wondering how it ended up with that kind of audience base in the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So they weren't. These weren't coaches. These were all people just trying to become creators. We were all at a similar stage, to be honest. But I had. This is funny. Like I think I had like 9,000 subs on YouTube and 9,000 followers on X. But that just gave me enough leverage to be able to, like, people wanted to have a chat.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, it's cool hearing that process. You've spoken about, because I was listening to your goal setting episode, about being like a thought leader in your space. Do you have any like deliberate practices that you do for actually cultivating that kind of original thought or creative thinking?
I don't think I have practices, but I would say that I am intentional about thinking about my unique mechanisms and my unique way of doing things and my systems and frameworks. You know, so one thing I actually learned, I would say this became clear with probably consuming a lot of Alex Hormozy's content. I think like there was just a moment where all of a sudden it became clear to me. I was like, okay, it really is all just about framing things through your lens. And so if any of you guys have read $100 million offers, which I have behind there on my bookshelf, not far, like one shelf down from .com Secrets. So if any of you have read those books, and maybe you had read .com Secrets by Russell Brunson first, and you then read $100 million offers, you're like, well, what the fuck? This guy has literally just repackaged the same ideas that Russell Brunson wrote about in his book. He's just repackaged and reformatted the frameworks and gave them different names, but that's all he's done. And I remember it clearly. I was like, this is brazen. This guy has just literally just taken, you know, he was mentored by Russell Brunson. And that's when it hit me. I was like, okay, there's no such thing as new ideas. There's just new ways of framing those ideas, which is why, like, you asked me about the difference between funnels and flywheels. I could easily argue that it's just technicality, but I've now seen the evidence in my business that the way I think about traffic is completely different to the way an e-com business would think about traffic. And so it is completely different. And I've seen how, the example of this is that I took my foot off sales and marketing completely in like January, February, March. I didn't post. I posted one video on Instagram. I posted a few videos on YouTube just to keep like show it that I'm showing up. But I basically took my foot completely off. I sent way less emails. My Instagram account grew faster than ever in that time when I didn't post at all. And my email list kept on growing at 100 leads per day average. And my YouTube channel was continuing to get views because I was shuttling people from Instagram over to my email list, over to YouTube. And that was without me putting any inputs in. And so that to me, it was like, holy shit, this really does work as a compounding effect. Because if I'm an e-commerce brand and I turn off ads for the day, guess what's happening? You're not making any sales. And so I made, this is kind of a bit of a wild thing to say, but in the past 4 months, I've made more money in the past 4 months than I have in the past 4 years combined.
How much?
Around $321,000
in Q1
in the past 4 months.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So significantly more than what I'd made in the past 4 years.
Yeah. Mate, that's so fucking cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. Like I said, I'll be honest.
Congratulations.
Cheers. But like, this is pretty new to me, to be honest, man. Like, this is like the last 4 months is the first time I've seen money in my entire life.
Yeah,
ever.
It definitely comes across. I think that's why I connected with your content so much, because we're always looking for people who are like just a little bit ahead of us, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? And
for sure.
And because we spoke about the agency and stuff in the podcast, and I was like, this guy, does seem like pretty new to it. I can see it in your content when you're like talking about it, and you're like, So it's just, and that's why I said to you, I was like, I'm fired up for this chat, because I was just like, I was listening to your stuff, and I was like, fucking hell, like he's doing it, and it's just, it's fucking hard work, and getting to the checkout, buying some food for the day and not knowing if your card's going to work. I know that fucking pain too. It's fucking awful. There's like a real visceral shame response that comes, and there will be a lot of people listen to that to this that will have this that'll have had this, and it's like, and I think maybe like people who you wouldn't even realize as well. Like, as people, a lot, I know, like, I'm quite open about my financial struggles and stuff like that, but a lot of people don't, because it's like this status game we're all trying to play, and no one wants to look like they're not doing it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, look, I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. Like, at the time, you put on this public face of like, yeah, I'm doing fine. But yeah, very, very much. There was a 6-month period where it, the only way I can describe it was that it felt like I was in a living hell. Like, it felt that, I remember it was, a really brutal time. I was like drinking every single day just to try and chill out at the end of the day. I would always have like a couple of drinks in the evening. Broke down like in my girlfriend's arms multiple times. This is, I'm not much of a crier, to be honest. Like, I never really have been. And yeah, I remember my girlfriend took me on holiday. She paid for my holiday. We went to Amsterdam in that summer of 2023. And I felt like a fucking failure, and as someone who had been through, when I was a dentist, I was at kind of at the top of the profession, like even though after a couple of years, but I when I quit, people were very surprised because I was teaching people around the world. I'd had pretty fast rise in those short 2 years, and I felt like I had, when I left dentistry, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to make this work, but I've seen the evidence, the proof that I can put myself in the top categories. But then, 10 years down the line, I'm there being like, for the first time, really, I would have friends and family just being like, Tom, is it time you get a job again? My business partners, like at the agency, they were like, yeah, maybe you should consider getting a job. And I was like, you're my fucking business partners. And
oh man,
that was when it was like, really brutal, really brutal. And I never thought it would get that bad, to be honest. I never thought my life would get that fucking penal, to be honest. And that was 2 years ago, like 20 to 24 months ago.
Yeah. And that's why it's all the more remarkable, like that you were able to like turn it around. And yeah, I just, as you were chatting there as well, I just had a flashback. We haven't spoke about this, but I had another business like a few years ago, and that was like during COVID. It was a live music venue, restaurant. Worst decision I ever made. Never get into hospitality, and literally like the whole COVID thing happened due to some like accounting decision. Everyone got put on furlough, including the other director, other than me, the other director who had another business. So I wasn't on furlough. The business was shut. And then I'm like having to like try and keep it going. And then I got a job working in insurance, cold calling. Do you know what fucking sector I was cold calling?
Go on.
Hospitality. I was ringing people from home because everyone's working from home. Ringing hospitality businesses, trying to sell them insurance. They're like, we're fucking shut. Do you not know? And I'm like, actually, I do. I've got a business in hospitality. And like the irony.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget about it, but I think that's what happens with trauma as well. Like you kind of just put it to the back and you're like, fucking hell, like move on. But yeah. So we're talking about money. Let's talk about happiness. So I was listening to your end of year review, or your start of year review, whatever it was. End of year review, wasn't it? Goal setting and stuff. And it's very clear to me that you're a driven person. I want to do this. I want to, you have your body fat goals and stuff like that. And I know it's a little bit cliche, but at what point will you be like satisfied? Like, do you ever? Because most people will like hear like those kind of numbers and be like, I'd be happy with that. So what's keeping you going?
So I am happy with that.
Yeah,
I feel like I've won the lottery, like right now, and it's not because of the money.
Yeah.
It's because I wake up every single day and I get to work with incredibly cool people across the entire globe who are all trying to be the best that they can be. I don't work with any dickheads anymore. I don't do sales calls. My days are chilled as fuck.
Mm.
I've won, man, like as far as I'm concerned. And so I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm extremely grateful. And that's one thing I probably, it's kind of getting towards the woo-woo stuff here, but like I feel like things started to click when I finally realized that I understood. Yeah, I understood some things, and I started to be grateful for the things that I had. Whereas I think before I was always operating from this place of I don't have, and not really. I never understood gratitude. So like I think when people, I would always hear, everyone talks about gratitude journaling, right? Like, and I never understood it because I tried it and I was like, I'll be like, what am I grateful for? And I wonder if, now thinking about it, the reason I'm now able to be grateful for the stuff that I'm grateful for, which are the small things, is because a couple of years ago I didn't have them. Like I couldn't even get food. And maybe the reason when I tried to be grateful for stuff 5 years ago or 6 years ago or whenever, when I had a solid job, had a roof over my head, I could pay rent every month, I could buy food, I could go on holiday, I could do those things. Maybe I didn't have perspective on that. But when those things were taken away and I didn't have those things, I think that reframed things for me, and now I'm grateful for the smallest things. And so I wake up, and the first thing that I try and do is, the first thing is a thought through my head is a thought of gratitude. Grateful to be alive, grateful to have an incredible house, grateful to just have the smallest things.
When did you start that gratitude practice? Did you start it like before like the success took off?
Yeah, I honestly, if I think they were it. So there are 3 books that I recommend to all of my clients, which I feel like had the biggest impact for me. I think not all 3 of them are here because I kind of have them by my bed, but the first one's Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And this to me was the first time I kind of I read something which made me question. I always knew that spirituality was like something, I'd always pushed it off. I'd be like, I'll investigate spirituality when I've made it, right? When I've got time. And I just spoke to someone about this earlier, but I'd always come from a science background. So for me, spirituality, religion was like bullshit, like just flat out bullshit. And then I remember hearing it was Dr. Andrew Huberman a couple of years ago. And this was probably around this time, to be honest. It was around like 2 years ago when life was really tough. And I remember hearing him talk about, and on a podcast, he was like, yeah, I'm religious. And I was like, what? Like the most high profile science dude in the world believes in God. And I think it was just a timing thing. And then I was like, okay, well, if this guy believes in God, and I have to be, I'll be fucking candid with you here. I was so desperate at that time that I started praying. I would literally kneel by the side of my bed and fucking pray that tomorrow I'd get money so that I could eat. That's the level that it got to. And so I started praying because I was desperate. And yeah, I read this book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and it was the science of, really ultimately, it's the science of goal setting and making things happen. It's this idea that humans are goal-seeking creatures, but it's essentially the science of manifestation. And it's written by, and I think this is why I resonated with the book, it's written by a cosmetic surgeon. So this book's written by a cosmetic surgeon who is also had this interest in psychology. So he would do cosmetic surgery, and he had written this in the 50s, in the 1950s, and he would do surgery on some people, and on some people, no matter what he did surgical wise, so like surgery wise, cosmetics wise, he couldn't get people to change their self-image. So he would do a new nose job on a patient, and then the patient 2 weeks later would be like, you haven't changed anything, despite there being significant changes he had made to their face. And this, by the way, explains why you have all these people who have crazy ass surgeries, is because they look in the mirror and they think they look the same as that they did 20 years ago. And it's because their self-image, the way they look at themselves and see themselves, has not changed. And it's just the incredible book about really ultimately about how humans are designed to seek targets and goals. And so that's the importance of setting a goal. And that's why I've now got like vision boards next to my desk with clear visions and goals about where I want to get to. And I just know that those are targets to aim towards. And I know now from reading this book that humans we are there to figure out how to get to a goal. So I'll give you a really simple example. I've got a glass of water behind me. My body is going to say, I want to take a sip of this water. So my hand has already done that without me even thinking about it, subconscious. And so that is an example of a human subconsciously setting a goal and then making it happen. But what I had never thought about was that actually that also happens in a long time horizon. So that's like an immediate example of I'm going to throw something and I'm going to aim and get it there. But what if I try to throw something for a long time and it's like over 2 to 5 years? And this book made me realize, but is the whole point is that that's how humans work. So setting long-term goals, humans, as long as you set a goal, you and keep that goal in your mind, you're going to get there. And so that's the number one book that kind of got me started on this. The second book that I always recommend is a book called Dollars Flow to Me Easily by Richard Dotts. It's a really short book. I always recommend reading these, not listening to these. That's like I think it's important. That book was the trigger for me to let go. And I read that in the middle of last year. And I mean, who knows, coincidence or what, but like seemingly around that time after I read that book, dollars flow to me easily. Dollars started flowing to me easily. So that was kind of linked to that book about this idea of kind of letting go, the idea that if you are, when you grip onto the handlebars of a bike really tight, you're going to zigzag all over the place. But if you loosen the grip and you just let it go, you're going to just flow. And the idea is that once you recognize that you already have everything that you ever need right here, right now, in this moment, right here, right now, you have everything that you need. So chill out. And I help my clients do this. This is a huge part of how I help my clients. And it's typically between the first 1 to 3 weeks. It takes at some point a switch gets flicked. They will have read Dollars Flow to Me Easily, and all of a sudden they make a switch from operating from like a mode of scarcity and lack into a mode of just peace, chill, and abundance. And I literally got a message today from one of my clients, Hugo, who he just pulled in 9,000 cash in the last 2 days, who was, when I started working with him about a month ago, I could just tell he was so tightly wound. He was so stressed. He was so and after about a week or two, he'd kind of loosened up, and I would see him on calls, and I can always see this, but it's the difference between people on calls having their face scrunched up, like kind of like focused and stressed, to all of a sudden they've got this slight smile just permanently on. And it's so because I see this time and time again now, and it's incredible. And then money starts flowing to them. So yeah, that's I again, tangent. So that was book number 2, by the way. Book number 3 is called 3 Magic Words, and that was me investigating the spiritual side of Psycho-Cybernetics. So Psycho-Cybernetics is like the science of like goal setting and making stuff happen. 3 Magic Words was like the frankly, it's so I read the Bible at the beginning of last year because I was like, okay, I want to adventure through. I want to figure this out for myself. So I read the Bible. I realized it's I grew up as as a Catholic going to church, and I hated it. It never made any sense to me going to church and seeing these dudes dressed in like weird ass robes, flinging around incense, giving you these little biscuits and shit. I thought it was just absolute bullshit.
I remember it.
Yeah, dude. I still believe, honestly, it's absolute bullshit. But then I read the Bible, the Old Testament, frankly, no offense, but also bullshit. But I realized the New Testament was a load, just like the ultimate personal development guide. And things started to click to me. I was like, oh shit. But I still struggled reading the Bible because of the Old English. So I hate poetry. I don't like poetry. I don't like Shakespeare. I never liked that because it's kind of, I'm a pretty like literal person. And then I read 3 Magic Words and I was like, okay, this is sick. Someone has just gone and taken the lessons from the Bible and put it into a format that is like readable and makes sense as like a normal modern human. And I think this was written about 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And yeah, that's kind of been my journey into, it's funny to say, but like, I do think I look back and I think the biggest unlock was deciding to go down this path of investigating this path of spirituality.
Let's talk about environment. How has that affected your journey over the last couple of years?
Yeah, dude, like so where I'm sat right now, is the first time in my life I've ever had like a single room where it's my office and there isn't a bed in it. So up until 3 months ago, I was always my office was my bedroom, and my dream was always to be able to build an office where I could have a fixed camera setup and I could just sit down, I could turn on, and I don't have to fiddle around with this. I don't have to fiddle around with the light. I have to fiddle around with the light a little bit if I want to move my desk up and down, but like the camera's
you have
fixed.
to run downstairs and grab the ring light from the living room I did.
Exactly. I don't have to do all that. And so at the end of September last year, September 2024, my lease was up in my old apartment where I had an office in my bedroom. My bedroom, it had my desk in. And it sucked making content in there, to be honest. And it prevented me from making, to really going ham on stuff, because it felt like I was an amateur. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go travel for a bit now that this my lease is up. So I went and moved to Cape Town for October, November, and a bit of December. So for about 2.5 months, I took all of my camera gear with me, and it was an absolute bloody nightmare. So I stayed in 2 different Airbnbs, and I'd have to take stuff down, put it up. It was just like, okay, if I want to go after these goals of, growing my audience, I'm not the type of guy that can deal with moving around, putting stuff up, taking stuff down, and just being in this constant state of I hate that. So I was like, okay, I need to move back to London, and I need to finally build like an office studio, which is what I have now. And yeah, it's taken me a few months to kind of to build this. And I'm about to really start putting the foot down on YouTube for the first time working with an editor. That's who I've got a call with after this, and really start pumping out consistent, high quality YouTube for the first time ever. Whereas I've kind of just been, I used an editor for a few videos last year for the first time, but everything else had been edited and made by me fully. But now it's time to play in the big leagues, which is kind of exciting. But my point is that for me, environment is having a stable environment. I recognized at the end of last year was really critical. And whereas I understand, are you familiar with Matt Gray? Have you seen him?
No.
Okay, so there's a creator called Matt Gray who runs, I think, a business called Founder OS. But he's just like a permanent nomad. But the guy runs like, 8-figure company or companies, and he's always making content on the go, but like high quality content. And I don't know how the hell he does it. I don't know how he does it, because he's clearly got a bit of gear with him because his content is pretty high quality, but he's always traveling in different locations. But I just realized that's just not me. I can't. I tried it and I was like, nah, this isn't for me. So fixed location, having the freedom to go on holiday, travel whenever I want, but like having an environment that is quiet. This is the first time I haven't lived with anyone as well, which is amazing. So yeah, environment for me was big.
Yeah, it's interesting because like at the moment, I'm wanting to go and do a bit of travel and do a little bit of the nomad stuff. And I did do quite a lot of traveling at the end of my 20s. And I remember, I know what I'm like when I try and work on the road, and very similar, I guess. I like can't get comfortable. I'm like, like fucking around like with laptop stands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, I could imagine. Like I'll get to that point. I'll get to Bali, and then I'm like, yeah, but I don't have like my setup that I have at home where I can just, do you know what I mean? Other than the ring light, I've got to take from downstairs. Like it's all. I literally, designed this so that I could record podcasts and just have it for working.
Yeah.
So yeah, that will be an interesting one.
Well, look, the kind of understanding that I've come to is it's either 3 months or 2 weeks, nothing in between.
Like, it's either enough time to get settled, and
you're either giving yourself enough time to actually, to either take equipment and get settled, and then 3 months is a good enough time. Like for me, when I moved to Cape Town, I had to move my stuff every 4 weeks to a new place, and that was just too much of a headache. But if I'd stayed in one place for 3 months, that probably would have been I could have handled that, got comfortable, got into a routine. But what I've decided now is like I would much rather have this base and then go travel for a week or 2 weeks or a weekend, and then come back and have this as a base and just be like, okay, then then it means all I have to do is come back, turn this thing on. I don't have to set anything up. It's there, fixed, ready to go.
Yeah, mate, that's cool. What about accountability? Have you got a coach?
No, not right now. But I am, it's been on my mind a lot, to be honest, accountability, because I recognize that there is a huge part. Accountability ultimately is just knowing what to focus on. It's got nothing to do with doing the work, because as entrepreneurs, we have a list of 20 things that we can do each day. What accountability is actually helping someone decipher what are the things that are going to move the needle the most. It's not about holding someone's hand to do those things, because most entrepreneurs will get work done. They will get work done. The problem arises when there is uncertainty over what they should do, what they should focus their energy on a day-to-day basis. So that, for me, that's something I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of weeks. And I've got an idea of what I think a solution could be. So part of it is like, I give my clients kind of checklists to know that they've completed certain things. So there's that. But what I know, and this is from how I act, is that I will highlight at the beginning of every quarter what are the most important projects for me to focus on, with regards to what is going to have the highest leverage, that if I get done, they're going to have the highest ROI as soon as they get done. what I've noticed is that I will push those back every day, every week, every month, and I will just default to the easiest things. And so what I'm trying to come up with, I want to come up with some sort of system that helps me on a day-to-day basis, not just on like a monthly or quarterly basis, but day-to-day, something that can help me be like, Tom, like if we can get this one thing done today, you're good. You're Gucci. You can do whatever the hell you want for the rest of the day, because this thing's going to have the biggest impact in your business, but you've been pushing it off for the last 2 months.
I've got an interesting tool that I might be able to offer you.
Okay, dude. Yeah. Tell me about this.
So,
because that's what I'm thinking about at the moment.
Yeah. Like I'm obsessed with goal setting and stuff, and people who follow me, like I've got this fucking whiteboard downstairs. You can tell I don't live with anyone. And I'm always fucking around with like different systems. And anyways, and I tend to go from habit focused, and I can nail habits. I'm like the fucking James, like the cheap man's James Clear. I can nail habits, but then what happens usually is I don't focus on the big things, like you say. So yeah, I've done my journaling, I've done my meditation, I've done the fucking washing up, I've got the sunlight in my eyes. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah, I've not had a wank. But then I'll get, and then and that feels, at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, that was all right, and then
it feels productive, right?
Yeah, it feels productive, but
feels
it didn't
productive.
actually do the thing. So, have you read Essentialism?
I have, yeah. I read it a few years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so I was hammering that at the beginning of the year, and it was just like, what's the most important thing? Focus on the, cut all the rest of the bullshit out. So what basically I kind of fell into this thing of the phone doesn't get turned on until the most important task gets done. And at the beginning of the year, it was transformative. Like for me, honestly, I got so much done. Some days, like I might get to like 12 o'clock and I've done, like I did the task, I turned the phone on, all the fucking dopamine, cortisol, everything. Like, where have you been? I've been trying to text you. And I'm like, yeah, but I've done my landing page or whatever.
Yeah.
Some days, I would wait until 4 o'clock or might get it done by 9:30, and then the phone goes on or whatever, and then the kind of the day's yours then.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at the moment, but I'm not doing. But I let all the other fucking stuff slide. So what my struggle is right now is being able to do both. Being able to do the habits, but also do the most important thing.
So look, so I do what you do. So I use it's not as like I don't have the phone off, because I typically actually sometimes need to have my phone to be able to do some of the work that I do in the mornings. But I use Opal.
I've got two phones, by the way.
Oh, you have two phones, yeah.
Yeah, there's the one is connected to Instagram and stuff. So I'll have the productivity phone is always on. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the thing. I'm like, that ain't my life. I remember I heard Chris Williamson talk about his two phones and how he's got, and I was like, I'm not trying to be that fucking productive. Okay. I can control myself. So what I have is I use Opal to block my social media and messaging apps until midday. And that I found is enough for me to be like, okay, then I've now conditioned myself to not need my phone. So I'm kind of good on that. I'll give you some context of the way I do stuff. I don't do to-do lists. I'm not a to-do list type of person. Never. I kind of occasionally, when I'm feeling really like I need to get stuff done, which I did today, I write a list of like, okay, these are the things I'm going to get done, but I never go back and like cross things out. I've always wished I could be that person, because that feels like that feels good. But yeah, my list hasn't been reviewed today, and I probably won't review it tonight or tomorrow. I think the reason I say this is I actually kind of like, I think people sometimes assume that you're like, people who are seeing some sort of success are like robots. And I think, you look at guys like Ali Abdaal, Dan Coe, and you're like, oh, these guys just never miss, right? They're always just like, they'll have their to-do list, and it'll be like perfectly like a ruler lined out across every single one. And it's like you assume these people are robots, and I think that's why I want to be transparent and open and be like, I ain't. I just try. All I do is I give myself 2 hours in the morning to focus on deep work, and then the rest of the day is for me is free game. If I've got calls, I'll have calls in the afternoon, and then I'll just try and get a couple of things done. If not, I don't worry about it. And I say that because I want to give people, you can do so much just by making sure that you try and focus on high leverage activities in the morning. But for me, I'm like 2 hours. I give myself, I'm like, it doesn't have to be 3, doesn't have to be 4, 2 hours of solid focused work on whatever the projects that I've got going on, the things I need to get done. And that's a win for the day. I've won the day. No matter what happens the rest of the day.
Yeah, man. And it's like you say, it's knowing what to focus on as well, isn't it? Have you got any like processes for actually setting goals and making sure that you don't chase something that you actually didn't want?
Okay, so that's a really good question, actually, because I'm actually very sensitive around that. I'm driven somewhat by a fear of that happening, chasing something that I didn't want, building something that doesn't fuel what I want. So right now, I feel like I've got a dream, like I'm living the dream. I work a couple of hours in the morning. I never take calls in the morning. I only take calls on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons. Today is a Friday. It's a massive exception for me to be doing a call on a Friday. So I have complete control over my diary. I spend a couple of hours at the gym, which was a dream when I was working an office job. I always wished I could get more than just an hour to go to the gym in the middle of the day. And I never could, because my boss it was always an hour and that's it. And that was not enough time to go to the gym, train, have a shower, and get back in time. You could never get a quality session done. So I was like, I just want 2 hours. So I have 2 hours in the middle of the day where I go and train, and I love it. I'll go to, get in the sauna and actually I'll take my time and not feel like I'm rushing. When it comes to like goals and projects, what I try and do is I try and simplify where I'm heading by highlighting people who I am inspired by, either the life that they're living, what they're doing, the challenges the problems that they're solving, the challenges that they're overcoming, the style that they're living. And I aim in that direction. And then what I try and do is I try to reverse engineer. Okay, well, I will either pay them to learn what they do. So I'll either get them, if I can't do that, which sometimes honestly happens, because sometimes I want to learn from business coaches, and some business coaches are dickheads and they don't want to work with other business coaches, which I think is lame. And so there are some people who I've wanted to work with, but they've been like, no, sorry, I don't work with other business coaches, because they're scared for some dumbass reason.
Zero sum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I now understand where they're operating from. They're operating from that kind of like that fear, that kind of like scarcity type of mode. So when people come to me and they're like, oh, Tom, I just really want to do what you're doing, and I like what you're doing. And I'm like, fuck yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Like, let's have another gladiator in the arena. It's just so,
well, it's a huge compliment as well. Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. But my point is that I've highlighted people that I'm looking at, and I'm like, okay, how do I just get there? And if I can't pay for them, I'll try and be like, okay, what do I think the steps? And I always break it down into just projects. So for me, if I go to my Asana now, I'll talk to you. I'll just quickly go, because it's only a few. I'm like, every quarter, it's just a few projects. So for my client success, it was onboarding. In Q1, it was onboarding my new client concierge, fully ramping him up, setting up the company wikis and playbooks, which is a project that he's going to be managing. setting up a new CRM, which I got done in January. So those are the three big projects, and those projects were so chunky that it meant I didn't have time to do sales and marketing. And so I wasn't making content. I wasn't making any of those things, but those were enough for me to be like, I know that if I place these foundational bricks now, those are going to be the highest leverage things for me to build a foundation off of for the rest of the year. So now when I'm about to step back into sales and marketing and go really ham, I've got a really solid foundation for me to launch off. But that was it. I was like 3 main projects: onboard my client concierge, implement a new CRM system, and set up playbooks and company wiki so that Ed, my new client concierge, can kind of start building out SOPs for the business. And that was it. Like, I think I started working with a new accountant. That was my finance goal, my finance project. And then my sales and marketing projects, which I haven't got to. These are now going to be Q2. Create new sales page. I started that process probably like 50% of the way through. Cancel GHL account. Haven't done that. Hire a new YouTube editor. I did actually do that. So I did get ahead of the game there. Set up sales CRM. Haven't done that. Hire a new DM and pipeline manager. Haven't done that. New VSL. Haven't done that. So yeah, but that's I've just told you all of my projects that I've highlighted. Some of them I've completed now, but it's not many. It's less than it's typically like on one hand.
Yeah, and that's why it makes sense to focus on the highest leverage stuff.
Yeah,
you talk about a lot about funnels, You talk a lot about Flywheel. What is the difference between a flywheel and a funnel?
The difference between this, at a simple way, like a funnel is you put energy into the top of a funnel and it goes down out the bottom, right? So that's a funnel, goes like that. Can you see? Does that work on this? Like, but that's a funnel shape, right?
Yeah.
So energy goes in the top, goes out through the bottom because there's a hole. A flywheel, energy goes into the flywheel and stays within the system and builds over time. When I used to work with the biggest brands on earth, they all ran funnels. And their job was to just get as many eyeballs in as possible and pay for traffic. And it's a traffic game. Mm-hmm. And so they run a funnel system where it's like they just need as much energy going into the top of the funnel as possible. Now, I was studying the biggest creators in the world, guys like Aman Gadji, Ali Abdaal, Dan Coe, guys like those, who were seemingly able to capture so much energy that they could make as much money as some of these big giant companies on their own or with very small teams. And I was like, okay, what are these guys doing differently? How are they able to do this? And it's funny because like Aman has started to talk about this recently about moving to flywheels or using a flywheel system rather than not using funnels. It's because they do a different approach. So for them, typically, for a lot of the time, they are just getting people into a system. And that person is either going to buy on day 0 or potentially up to like, year 2, year 3, and who knows. But I had evidence yesterday, like 2 guys who I met just under 2 years ago, about 20 months ago, just finally bought from me. And so that's the kind of like the difference between a funnel is that for really large brands, they're buying traffic to get people to purchase today, ASAP. They're going to get someone in and they're going to get them. They want the process to be as frictionless as possible to get someone to click buy. But they know there's a big chance if that person doesn't buy, they're dusted, they're dead. Whereas what the best creators in the world have done, the guys like who I've mentioned, they've created flywheels which compound over time. So when someone's into that system, they stay in it until the theory is until they've warmed up enough to want to buy from you.
I suppose one thing I was thinking was if someone's running a funnel and, like you say, the energy is coming out the end. So let's say in a shopping experience, they'd get to the cart and then they abandon the checkout is a term we use, right? If someone, let's say they were pixeled on that and then they got followed around the internet with ads, obviously that's not as easy as it used to be with some of the stuff that's come into play. Is that still a funnel, or is that just a different type of campaign?
This is where we're kind of getting like, it's like we're splitting hairs, where it's like, to me, it's not, I use retargeting ads. So like, the point is that what my Flywheel is designed to fulfill Google's 7-11-4 rule. So an e-com funnel isn't. An e-com funnel is just, let's get an eyeball and let's see what happens. A Flywheel that I've built is based on Google's buying data, which is saying that for someone to have enough trust to buy online, they have to see something. They have to consume 11 hours of your content. They need to have 7 touch points across 4 different formats. And so what I've built is I've built my Flywheel to hit those things. So I have short form content as my first kind of like point of contact within the Flywheel. The aim then is I want to then get them as immediately over to my long form content and onto my email list. And so we've then got 1, 2, and then 3 different touch points. The 4th touch point is then I've got a community that I have on school. And so that's the kind of like the 4 different touch points. But I want to get them consuming 11 hours of my content as fast as possible. And so the best way for me to do that is 2 different ways. I get them either straight onto my YouTube channel, and then I get them consuming and ideally binging my content, which I get told a lot of, like people are like, oh, I binged your content.
I did it this morning.
That's intentional, yeah. And the other way is an insurance policy is I get them onto my email list, and I do this both in one click. And I get the email list as a way for them to also access my long form content. So I have welcome sequences. I also share emails most days with videos to give people as much of an opportunity to get to that 11 hours of content consumed as possible. And so that to me that's where it's like an e-com business running retargeting ads. That ain't anywhere near as sophisticated as what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, sure. I think I heard you say, one of your videos, I'm sure it was, show me a checkout page or something. You said you don't have a checkout page.
Yeah.
I guess that's a determining factor of a Flywheel. Would that be fair to say? A Flywheel doesn't have like a checkout. You're trying to get them in the email bit, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I want them in the system, and then I will decide when that person sees the checkout link.
Yeah. Figuring out when the time's right to send the offer.
Exactly. So right now, I'm currently in a launch phase. So for this week, I'm sending my checkout link out. And so people who are within the Flywheel have an opportunity to convert into that offer. But then for the next 3 weeks, they won't have access to that checkout link.
And then you're creating that scarcity as well.
Yeah.
Very cool. Tech stack. Talk to me about your tools, what you're using.
Okay, so website is, I was deciding on whether ClickFunnels, Samcart, Thrivecart, or a custom. So I've kind of gone custom build with Samcart as the checkout for now. So that's that. Email is Gmail and Kit. Calls are Google Calendar, Calendly, and Zoom. Client management is School, Slack, Advent, Gamma, and Airtable. So add that in.
Nice.
CRM and sales, haven't done this yet, but will be Pipedrive. I did have Typeform, but I think I'm dropping that. Pay funnels for custom invoicing, and DocuSign, which I haven't set up yet.
Do they all integrate together? You've got to use like Zapier or something.
I do. Yeah, I do. I use Zapier a fair bit. Yeah.
Or Zapier. Or
Yeah,
whatever
Zapier, yeah. And then project management is Asana, Notion, and Gamma. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head if there's anything else. That's it for my business. That's it.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. One of the things that do you think there's a distrust of business coaches?
Well, it depends who you ask. I think like I'll
give you some context. So I was talking to someone about this, about possibly bringing someone in, and quite often you'll hear, well, if they were so good at business, they won't be teaching other people how to do it. And I think that's the you hear that a lot. And I wonder what you would say to those people. Like, what is it? Yeah, what is it that's driving that? And is there any truth to it? I mean, I suppose there are some charlatans out there, but
yeah,
like, what would you say to that objection to, someone working with a business coach or a mentor or whatever?
Okay, so I'll give you my just general thoughts on this. So I'm a huge advocate in paying for business mentorship, guidance, consulting. I invest a shitload of money into that. So you're probably asking the wrong person, to be honest, because there's the reason I'm where I'm at. The reason I made more money in the last 4 months than I did in the last 4 years is purely because I invested in the help that I needed to get.
That's what I see. I think I'm asking the right person for that reason. Right?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like you've just said.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I like I said, all I do is I'm looking to go towards someone's life that I think it looks cool, and I'm going to ask, and I'm going to get them to pay me for the cheat codes. I'm going to pay them for the cheat codes. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to give you money, give you the cheat codes. So let me accelerate my learning and my lessons. So from my perspective, I just love helping people. Business, I guess business is the game I've chosen to help people in. When it used to be teeth, I used to be in the teeth game, but now I'm in the business game. I used to help people in the teeth game. I used to teach people in the teeth game. I'm an educator. Ultimately, that's my driver. I love helping people. And I also love teaching. For whatever reason, that's me. I love sharing my knowledge and my insights. I've forever been like that. I consider myself a guide more than anything. I don't say I'm a coach or a consultant. I'm a guide, and I'm a guide because I show people what I've done, but people have to tap into their own intuition. And I call my core value in my business is fuck around and find out. And what that means is that I want to empower my clients to understand that the true answer is within them. And my job is to empower them to know that and to trust their own judgment. My job, I see, is to give them the guide rails. Like you go bowling. My job is to kind of give them the bumpers on the side to be like, okay, stay within these lines, operate within these lines, but you've got a shitload of space that you can go fuck around and find out in. Yeah.
It's weird that you use that analogy, actually, because I've said in the past, that's what it feels like being creative.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I literally, because you doing that thing with your hands like that, I was like, I've shown this so many times. I was like, I need someone to set the boundaries. And I'm like, I might go over here. I might try and get over the barrier a little bit, but I will, I'll stay within them. And I think that's the challenge as creative people, isn't it?
For sure. And so for me, I set boundaries for myself as well. So my boundaries are, I don't do sales calls. I don't take calls outside of Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. So I set myself constraints and rules. Outside of that, fucking go have some fun. Just enjoy it. Figure shit out along the way. You want to post 5 videos a week on Instagram? Post 5. You want to post 20? Post 20. You do you. It all works. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you're consistent within those constraints. So we've got the constraints. We've got to kind of set the boundaries. And sure, you can push them and stuff, but if to get people going, at least get that initial traction, it helps to have those boundaries to be so that people aren't, again, it comes back to accountability. And people, if they don't have those clear boundaries, then they're like constantly asking, oh, what should I do? What should I be? What should I be focusing on? And so that's why I do that, by giving them checklists. I'm like, do this, do this, do this. And then they've got the, again, one of my values is 80% done is 100% fucking awesome. So get 80% of the way there, ship it, figure out, test it in the market, get real world feedback. Then you do another test, and that's how you never fail. Like, because if everything is just a test and a lesson, then there's no such thing as failing. So my big thing is getting people to act with their own, learning to trust their own judgment, operate within the guidelines that I give them, and then just understanding that it's about speed, getting stuff out, not overthinking things, and getting true feedback from the real world, which is the market. So that's why I don't, when people are like, oh, Tom, can you review this thing? I'm like, no, your market can review this thing. Okay. Because your market's going to give you actual feedback, because I'm not your market. I'm not your ideal customer, because you're selling to like 50-year-old women. So how the hell can I give you constructive advice? Yeah. Go put this in front of 50-year-old women. Yeah.
And it's interesting because it's almost like that. Those boundaries then become like an inverted way of you when you're mentoring them, because they've got their business, they've already kind of got the boundaries, so it kind of works in both ways.
Exactly,
which is interesting. Yeah, so cool. One last little one. So you've got 7 habits. 7 habits for, I tell you what, let's say you, Tom, 2 years ago, has 7 habits that he can do every day to get him to where he is now. What 7 would you pick as non-negotiables?
I'll give you my 6 non-negotiables that I live by and I teach my clients. I'm afraid I can't give you a 7th because I don't have them, but I have 6. So the first one's body.
Yeah.
So 10,000 steps. I typically aim. It dips off massively in the winter, but I'm typically aiming for like 15 to 20,000 steps a day. And that the point of that is giving myself creative space. So that's not, it's a little bit about health. It helps with, I think it's helped with me staying in shape, but the big one is actually creative mind space. So that's the big one there. The second one is mind. So 10 pages of reading. So this is a big thing that I've only implemented in the last year. So I start the day with 10 pages of reading. I don't leave it to the last thing at night, which is what I used to do. So I start the day with 10 pages of reading.
That be non-fiction or?
Yeah, I haven't been a fiction guy for a while, but I'm sure I'll dive into fiction at some point.
I can't do either.
And then 20 minutes of mindfulness. So that's for the soul. So I typically do that. I like to, I give myself some kind of grace with that. I try and gather mindfulness throughout the day. So whether that's 10 minutes in the sauna, 5 minutes in the shower, just reminding myself to get at least 20 minutes of mindfulness. And I usually that's done in the morning when I'm journaling. So I do my journaling and then also sauna, bit of breath work. So I try and like chip away at that goal. Goals is reviewing them 3 times a day. So trying to remind myself of my goals 3 times a day. So I have goals, whether it's my phone, I've got my goals on my screen. I've got my goals on my vision board. I write down my goals first thing in the morning. And that's linked to that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, is just keeping goals, just reminding yourself every day.
You got like a minimum time you need to spend on them, anything like that? Like what's the protocol like in order to check that box? What's the minimum acceptable?
Honestly, like I give myself, here's a little thing, like and this is where I try and keep things really simple. My goals, I have like 3 goals a month. It's like a business goal, a life goal, and then like a health goal. And I keep it really simple. And I just try and just be aware every day. I'm like, okay, what am I doing today? And yeah, I could be, there've been times when I've been a bit more, I've done this thing called the 369 method where, like, I don't think I've got it here, but like I take this little book and I just write my main goal, just lines 3 times, then 6 times at lunch, and then 9 times in the evening. I did that when I was in Cape Town. It's pretty fucking extreme, to be honest. But I had some big goals. So I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to get locked in. So I did that. But I just as long as I start the day with some mindfulness around my goals, so I write them in the mornings, then I'm happy with that, to be honest. The 5th one is content, so 100 minutes of content creation every day, and that's designed to just be like, hey, you need to be doing at least 500 minutes a week. So it's like, does it need to be 100 minutes today? No, but like you need to be getting like 500 minutes a week in. So it doesn't matter. So I typically will batch things. So I'll do things in chunks. I'll do like 2-3 hours of scripting. And so across the month, I'm bagging that time. So usually I do like an email. I'll write an email a day, spend about an hour doing that. And then a little bit of other content creation that takes me to about 100 minutes per day. And then the last one is outreach, doing about half an hour, 30 minutes minimum of just conversations with people.
Awesome.
Those are the 6.
I love that you had it prepped.
Well, I don't. So I was like, the thing is, the truth is, that's why I had to go back to this list, because this is what I teach my clients.
Yeah.
It's now second nature to me. So
yeah.
I now do these things without thinking about it. And so I had to just remind myself, I was like, shit, let me just make sure, because it's like I do that. So that's the cool thing. The cool thing is that from me doing this and being mindfulness about doing these things, there was a period when I had to practice these things, but now it's ingrained.
Yeah. It's like that guardrail thing that you were talking about as well. Like it's the same with habits. And I will find like if I fall off the wagon a little bit, which probably I'm doing a little bit now, I might have to go back to the habit checking.
Yeah.
And then until they become like drilled again, right? And they become second nature. And then, yeah.
It is. So the one thing I do with my clients is at the beginning of like our weekly masterclass calls, I always get everyone to like just drop in the chat out of 10, how are they scoring themselves? And that's just so that once a week they've got a check-in where it's like, oh shit, actually, fuck, I'm like, I feel like 5 out of 10 this week. And then it's a little prompt to be like, why am I 5 out of 10? And it's funny because it is definitely a gut thing. Like you just know immediately. You're like, oh shit, I'm locked in this week. And it's so fun, like seeing some people like 8 and 9s come in, and when people are dropping 8 and 9s, they're fucking locked in.
Are you able to see their habits as well? Do they do you have that?
No.
Okay. So
no, I don't. I'm no.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Listen, mate, thank you so much. I know you've got to get on that call, so I'm not going to keep you any longer.
Thanks, man.
This has been great. I really appreciate your time. And like I said before, what you're doing, I think, is just fucking awesome. It's so inspiring. I'll drop your channel, etc., into the comments. People can check it out. Go get inspired. You do so much fucking content. And it's authentic and yeah, it's great. So
thanks, man.
Keep crushing it, keep inspiring, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Thanks. Likewise, Jason, you like crushing it as well, man. Just it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on. And yeah, I'll see you guys out in the wild.
Love it. Cheers, mate. Have a good one. Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode, and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?